Miklós Duray, a Hungarian prisoner of conscience from Czechoslovakia, is spending a year in the United States, speaking about his experiences and the global impact of Amnesty International.
Kedves barátaim, Daytoni magyarok!
My dear friends, dear Hungarians of Dayton, between 1982 and 1985 I was arrested twice. My first imprisonment ended with my release without being tried or condemned. But at the second time of my arrest, they suspended the judiciary process against me. This event, which ended in a good outcome, was due to the international solidarity and pressure to which the Czechoslovakian government could not resist.
Jó kimeneteli esemény, tulajdonképpen annak volt köszönhető, hogy nagy nemzetközi összefogás alakult ki ügyemben, és ezelőtt hajolt meg a csehszlovák kormány. A nemzetközi összefogásban több szervezet is részt vett.
Among the international organizations helping me in my plight were the Hungarian Human Rights Foundation. However, the main leader of the protest was Amnesty International. This is what I would like to say in a few words today.
Az Amnesty International kiterjedt nemzetközi jogvédelmi tevékenységének nagy erkölcsi súlya van a kelet-közép-európai országokban.
The international work of Amnesty International has a very good reputation and moral power in the narrow circle of those in Eastern Europe who are politically informed. We know that your organization has no power equal to those of governments, only the moral impact on them. Therefore, we do not expect miracles nor spectacular results, but we appreciate the work as you do it for the persecuted individuals, as you find defense for them, as you draw attention and keep it constantly focused on political injustice. This gives moral support to those affected and to their families, and it often is of real help. It increases the strength of those who have shouldered the battle against oppression and dictatorship, and it means hope for the oppressed.
Többlet erőt ad azoknak, akik szülőföldjükön fölvették a harcot az elnyomás és a diktatúra ellen. Reménységet jelent a megfurcsoltak. Tudjuk, milyen nehéz lemérni egy-egy akció hatásfokát.
I suppose that you know how difficult it is to measure the results of your actions, or whether or not news of your operation reaches the persecuted. Therefore, I was happy indeed to get your invitation to meet with you, because thus I can personally report my experiences, and also because you may not often have the chance to meet with one of your protégés.
Mert valószínűleg ritkán találkoznak, és önök is ritkán találkoznak azokkal, akiknek a védelmére keltek. Előre kell bocsájtanak.
When I was in prison, I had no knowledge of the steps you took for me. A few indications, fragments, of the actual intervention did reach me even in prison, and it was sufficient to strengthen me in body and soul. Sometimes, in the summer of 1984, I was escorted to the prison doctor. I was amazed. Nobody was ever escorted to the prison medical service without requesting it. In the medical office, I got a shot, but soon the real reason for my being there was revealed. The doctor began to quarrel with me nervously, gesticulating vehemently while holding an airmail envelope. I saw it had come from the United States. An unknown American physician had written in the name of a medical society requesting Mayan prisoners to give me the attention, enumerating my ailments for which medication and treatment was needed. The young prison doctor was upset, rejecting the request and saying it was an illegal intrusion into internal affairs, and very likely only due to complaints supposedly smuggled out of prison by me. Then he explained to me, as if I were the author of the said letter, that their procedure was absolutely according to the rules.
Felháborodva utasította vissza amerikai kollégájának a beavatkozási minősített kérését, amelyet állítólag az én börtönből kijuttatott üzenetem nyomán írt. A majd közölte velem, mintha én lettem volna az amerikai levélírója, hogy ők mindenben az előírások szerint járnak el, ezért velem sem bánhatnak másképp. Ezen nyilván azt kellett értenem,
To be understood is that while I had a biliary colic on several occasions, or when I had high fever, no treatment received was the proper procedure according to the rules. Needless to mention, I was less interested in the words of the prison doctor than in trying to see the name and address of the sender. Unfortunately, I was able to catch only sight of the 2 letters before the zip code, that the letter had come from the state of New Jersey.
hogy a levél New Jersey államból érkezik. Ez a kedves amerikai orvos,
This kind American doctor, who went to the trouble and wrote on my behalf, could not possibly know of the importance of the message his letter had brought me.
biztosan nem sejtett,
It told me that 3 months after having been imprisoned,
levele,
people in the world were concerned with my plight, and I had not been forgotten.
ebből tudtam,
This letter strengthened me in my belief.
a második letar,
Not only was I able to sit in front of my interrogators for days on end without saying a word,
hogy nem felel,
but I also gained psychological superiority over the cellmate who was the government's informer.
ez a levél megerősített hitemben. Nem csak a kihallgatásomat vezető politikai rendőrrel tudtam kitartóbban ülni, szótlanul napoztatak, hanem a cellámban hozzám rendelt besúgó fogolyjal szemben is lélektani fölénybe kerültem. Ugyanis 4,5 hónapig egy visszaeső bűnözővel voltam összezárva, aki nagy időre várt, tehát 5 éves elítélés. Nyilván kedvezményt helyeztek kilátásba számára, ha sikerül engem megtörni. Próbálkozásai nem vezettek sikerre. 11,5 évre ítélték. Természetesen csak később jöttem rá, hogy a volt cellattársam beszúrtódott. Az említett levélen kívül más jelzést is kaptam. Tudomásom szerint 3 rendkívüli csomagom érkezett. Egy Japánból, egy Franciaországból és egy az USA-ból.
Then I got another indication of concern from the outside world. As far as I know, I got at least 3 parcels, one from the USA, one from France, and one from Japan. The prison director does not allow parcels without preliminary permission, yet they handed to me 2 of them. The one from Paris, which had come just before Christmas, and contained sweets. It was opened in the presence of a prison security officers, and they broke the chocolates into small pieces, saying that they had to make sure that my accomplices in the West did not hide explosives and or poison inside the candy. They told me that they would throw away any subsequent parcel that came for me.
Nem kapom meg, hanem felbontatlanul a szemétbe dobják. A csomag átvétele után
My escort, while taking me back to my cell, said to me when nobody was within earshot, "Duray, you are a famous person." You can imagine how happy I was to hear this indirect information and to be addressed in a person-to-person manner, when the normal procedure of communication was for the prisoners to stand facing the wall with hands behind their backs. It was grotesque to see the envious face of my warden, who in a sense a prisoner himself, while unwittingly communicating the fact that my case had gone beyond internal affairs, meaning that international solidarity had borne fruit. You see how important and unreplaceable your work is.
Arról tudósított újólag, hogy az igen túllépte a belügy határt, és ez a nemzetközi támogatás eredménye. Látják, ezért is fontos. Szinte felbecsülhetetlen értékű az önök szolidarizáló és segítő munkát. Miután szabadlábra kerültem, megtudtam,
Later on, when I was set free, I learned that I should have gotten many hundreds of letters from you and other chapters of Amnesty International, but I did not get them. Only 7 letters were delivered, one from Sweden, one from Italy, and 5 from the United States. The rest of the letters got stuck somewhere on the official filter. But this does not really matter, because they were meant more for the eyes of the officials than as a means to bolster my spirits. In Christmas of 1984, I received a novel by an English communist. The novel was about the imprisonment of a leftist trade union member in London. After this union agitator was imprisoned, he received a suitcase full of letters and telegrams from communists all over the world. I'm not sure how relevant that is to my story, but to me it serves to illustrate the sad truth that the Czechoslovakian government is not only totalitarian, but it is also petty.
Csehszlovákiában a hatalom nem csak totalitárius, hanem kicsinyes. Ugyanis miből állt volna az, hogyha nekem írt leveleket átadják? Azt nem tudom, hogy az Amnesty International figyelemmel...
I do not know if it was due to Amnesty International's actions, but during my second imprisonment I was not harmed physically. During my first imprisonment, on Christmas 1982, I was pulled out of my cell by prison guards to be beaten in the corridor. But I do know what misses the attention of the organizations concerned with humanitarian and civil rights issues. I would like to state here that the following is not meant to be a reproof, but rather a means to give a clear picture.
A világban az Amnesty Internationalhez és a többi nemzetközi
Organizations such as yours can only perceive cases where there are actual unjust imprisonments, persecutions, or murders. However, persecution, oppression, discrimination, lack of justice do not usually have a spectacular and attention-calling start. They expand almost unperceived, infiltrating the nervous system, the soul, so to say, humiliating the personality and the dignity of those affected. But then suddenly one starts whispering, communicating less and less. One starts withholding one's thoughts, because one is being observed. One might be observed. One starts tearing pages out of one's notebook, first only those that may contain incriminating annotations or addresses. Later, the notebook will remain empty because one stops writing down anything at all.
egyre több gondolatát nyomja el, mert figyelheti, hogy mit van. Jegyzetfüzetéből először csak kitéti a lapokat, egy pár lapot. Esetleg a gyanúsnak, árulkodónak kiterhető feljegyzéseket, címeket. Majd egyszer csak üres marad a notesze, mert már nem ír fel semmit. A legfontosabbakat megjegyzi.
The most important thing one delegates to memory. The rest one forgets. One receives less and less letters because oneself has stopped writing. Unwritten letters cannot be censored. The phone bills decrease because one uses the phone rarely, knowing that it is tapped. Sometimes, overwhelmed by rage, one reads entire sections of a novel into the phone. If someone is listening, then let them listen to something. If one wants to talk to one's wife or to friends, one leaves the house or moves to a part where he hopes to be beyond the reach of the listening device. Visitors become scarce, and one hesitates to invite one's friends, fearing the exposure. Walking the street, one meets less and less acquaintances due to mutual avoidance. To meet close friends, one has to develop entire strategies. And if times and meeting places happen to get mixed up in one's memory, one has to start all over again. In the end, one realizes that this takes up all of one's time. The next realization may be that it becomes harder and harder to make ends meet because one's income decreases due to the stoppage of bonuses and profit shares, and one's salary is not only not increased but decreased. Therefore, one becomes poorer and poorer. One is being pauperized.
Fizetésemelésre pedig nem javasolják, sőt, csökkentik a jövedelmet. Ezért a szedikkel autorizálják. Nem egy általánosított helyzetet írt ember ezekben a szavakban.
The above description illustrates the fate of many of the opposition, including my own, but is documented by police protocol not so much as a signatory of the Charter 77, but rather due to my being Hungarian. Living in Czechoslovakia, this is not coincidental. The present, as well as Czechoslovak governments of all times, have considered Hungarians living under their rule as strangers to be eliminated, either gradually or quickly. 3 methods have so far been applied. Between the 2 world wars, democracy was limited by the national interest of the majority. After the Second World War, total withdrawal of rights and methods similar to those used during the Holocaust. Now, under communist rule, intervention by a totalitarian state. As such, it is the most intrusive of them all, because it affects all levels and phases of society. It is felt in the denial of protection of interests, in economic discrimination, in the limitation of the use of the mother tongue and schooling in the same, in the forced atrophying of a higher level of cultural manifestation, in the hindrance of contacts with Hungarians across the border, including those with family members.
Magyarország és a környékbeli államokban összefüggő területen élő magyarokkal való kapcsolatának akadályozásában, kezdve a turisztikától, a kulturális kapcsolatokon át a családi kapcsolatokon. A totalista államnak nem egyetlen...
Oppression of the minorities is not the only peculiarity of a totalitarian state. It wants to dominate the entire population. But while the majority nations also suffer under this rule, due to their completeness as a society and due to the fact that they are not discriminated against, they are able to develop compensatory, defensive, and alternative structures to counteract ideological and political oppression. The minorities are unable to follow suit.
Mert a hatalomnak sikerült a többségi nemzet nagy részét is érdekelté tenni a kisebbség elnyomását. Ennek számtalan jele van.
This is noticeable in many ways, as I myself have experienced it. For example, on one hand, many of my colleagues admired me for belonging to the opposition and for having the courage to confront the powers that be. But on the other, many of them rejected me because I defended the rights of Hungarians, a minority. The rejection of equal rights for minorities sometimes leads to extremes, as for instance in 1987 when a number of neo-fascist anti-Hungarian attacks were organized simultaneously in different parts of the country by some known and some unknown perpetrators. Their aim was to raise anti-Hungarian and anti-Semitic sentiments. The government supports these activities, since the known perpetrators were not punished and the unknown ones were not tracked down. Don't misunderstand me. I am not accusing the nation, only the oppressors and the instigators. All Hungarians know, or at least feel, that they have to get along with their neighbors in one way or the other. Therefore, a common ground has to be found. I myself have experienced, and I am sure I am not alone, that a normal coexistence is possible. Proof of this is the good relationship between Charter 77 and the Committee for the Defense of the Rights of the Hungarian Minority in Czechoslovakia, in their co-published document. But at this point, neither the political nor the general situation is in favor of those seeking coexistence and understanding.
Sem a politikai helyzet, sem az általános társadalmi kapcsolatok nem kedveznek az együttélésnek és a békességnek. Nyilván hallottak róla, hogy Albert Einstein, mielőtt a növekvő zsidói...
You may have heard what Albert Einstein said before leaving Germany to come to the United States in order to avoid Nazi persecution. He said that he wanted to live in a part of the world where people can be free. I agree wholeheartedly with him, and I would like my native land to be one of those. so that when I return this fall with my family, I would not need to dread persecution, hate, and oppression.
Hogyha ezért őszén visszatérek családommal, ne kelljen rettegnem az üldöztetés vagy a gyűlölködés miatt. Köszönöm mindannyiuknak.
Thank you for your attention, and I thank you for your solidarity and your help in my release. And thank you for aiding in a similar manner my friends and fellow sufferers. I hope that your selfless efforts will bear fruit for the future, for a common future. And thank you for your attention.
Köszönöm azt is, hogy hasonlóan segítették és segítik barátaimat és sorstársaimat. Remélem, hogy önzetlen fáradozásuk a jövő, közös jövőnk számára is hasznos lesz. Köszönöm figyelmüket.
Erre befelé. Álljatok meg el!